Well, one of the beautiful things about all of us as disciples of the Lord is that each one of us has a vocation story. Put that in context. We know that there are 4 sacred vocations in life, and each one of them is called to live one of them. The vocation to be married, or the vocation to be single, or the vocation to be a sister, religious sister, or religious brother, or a vocation to be a deacon, priest, or a bishop. They're all sacred acknowledgments that God calls us, so that who we are as disciples of the Lord Jesus and how we live out that discipleship is never an accident. From Jesus' heart, it is in fact the call that ultimately becomes, as I like to say, our ticket to heaven. And so I think of those of you who are parents or grandparents, you know what a little giggle there is when your kids or grandkids will ask you the question, well, how did you both fall in love? And which one of you first knew that it was for keeps? And I know that when it comes to vocation discernment, young men who are thinking about coming into the seminary, or young ladies who are thinking about joining the convent, there is a really important element for those of us who have already reached that vocation to tell our story. And those of you who are single know what a precious vocation that is. Well, I think it's important for us as we take a look at who we are, what Jesus calls us to be, to recognize something that we just heard in today's gospel. Towards the end of that gospel, the apostles realized that they didn't dare ask who Jesus was. But they should have. Because as we hear John tell that particular gospel, this was the 3rd time since Jesus rose from the dead that they didn't recognize him. 3rd time. And the beauty part of it is that, Jesus is not going to give up on them. He's going to continue to come. He did continue to come to be with them, to make sure that their eyes and their hearts were really opened. And we know eventually that what they said at the end of that gospel is something that they lived. They lived it so much that they died for it. It is the Lord. So I think it's important for us to be able to take a look at this particular gospel and apply it to our lives today. Whether you're married, or you're single, or you're a religious sister or a religious brother, or for those of us who are deacons, priests, and bishops, it's important for us to realize where we are now, what God has called us to be, and to embrace it for the rest of our lives. But it seems to me, my sisters and brothers, that there are a couple of important things that play into the fidelity for us to our vocations. And first of all, it's not simply a matter for us to ask questions of ourselves about who am I, what makes me tick, how did God create me in his image and likeness, what are the gifts and talents I have, what are the gifts and talents I don't have. But if we're really going to be serious about vocation being a ticket to heaven, then we do have to ask that question that the apostles should have asked in today's story. Who are you, dear Jesus? And we can never get enough to know who he is. It's a lifelong romance, as I said earlier this week. It's a lifelong opportunity for us to come to know Jesus so that we can, in fact, come to not only know him better, not only to love him better, but to live him as well. And that is, in the end, what a vocation is. And so today, I'd like to suggest that all of us spend a little bit of time thanking the Lord for the vocation that's ours. And ask the dear Jesus to give us the grace that we may, through our vocation, come to know him better, so that in the end, his purpose for our vocation, whether we're married, single, religious, or ordained, that his purpose will in fact be real. Namely, that it becomes our ticket to heaven. And after all, isn't that what this whole journey is all about? Isn't that why Jesus came to earth? Isn't that why he suffered, died, and rose from the dead? So that we, through the calling he has given us, will in the end get to heaven.